Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you happen to be in this wonderful world, wacky world. Welcome to another Scene Set Desolate Crusade Season 2. Tonight, we set the scene within the boundaries of Lady Katarina's domain, the Mistress of Harpies. Jubilant, joyous, and ever vocal, the sombre Ancilla of Edessa, child of the La Sombra Seneschal. We hone the scene in on a pale and rather unsettling Cainite known as Brigitte, a Cappadocian.
Yeah.
A rather cold and lifeless figure, to be sure, had she not, if she were not moving at this very moment, skulking her way through the nobles' quarter. Quite a difficult place to get into, as it turns out. Security is quite tight. It's a gated community. The entire place is quite literally walled off from the common man. But Katerina has ensured that you have been granted permission to enter and depart for this evening, though you are not welcome to feed here. Not that you'd appear to have much luck. It is quite unsettling here. The few people that appear to be out on the street seem unsettled and put off by your presence.
Yeah, I assume I look like a fish out of the water there.
Very much so. Not only does your Cappadocian demeanor
I do have a hood though.
yes, but it's a supernatural weakness, so
Yeah.
it causes people to narrow their eyes at you as they pass you by. Of course, most are simply in carriages and just ride right by you. Catching a meal here would be tricky, to say the least. But on top of that, you also look, as you say, like a fish out of water. You are a common woman in a domain built and made for the aristocracy. The educated, the elite, those blessed by the blood, as it were.
At least I'm a high clan.
A shame that mortals appear to treat you as if you're so low. But you are able to make it to Katarina's abode without issue.
I will knock on the door.
Before you are able to two guardsmen, two watchmen stop you and acquire your identification before allowing you entry. Acquire a name and an invitation, but you possess both these things, at which point you are permitted to enter and knock on the door.
Can I now knock on the door?
Yes.
Alright, I'll knock on the door, creepily.
The door opens. Uh, Revealing a woman of mixed descent. Staring directly at you. She appears to be she's quite petite, but much like yourself, she's quite small and waifish, as it were. Um,
What was the second word?
One second. I will just link you to the word itself, waifish. Basically quite thin,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
small.
Twinsies! No.
She looks at you almost expressionless. She simply bows.
I will also bow expressionlessly.
She has she kind of has a rather long flowing gown on.
Those are worldly things. I don't pay attention to that.
That's more than fair.
I assume this is a ghoul or a butler. What?
You're not sure. Do you have all specs too?
I mean, no. I have aspects one.
Okay, then you don't know.
I don't know. I will speak to her. I will say, good evening. I'm looking for the lady Katerina.
I see. May I ask for your name, please?
I am Brigitte of Clan Cappadocian. I am expected.
She... Her eyes close for a moment, as if for the briefest amount of consideration. I see. Yes, you have been expected. Then,
May I come in?
if you would please, I would show you to your host.
Yes, thank you. I will follow you.
She she leads you through the noble estate. It's the nobles' quarter exists within the city walls, so the estate is every house, obviously because there aren't many nobles, the houses here are fairly large and have very large and have multiple floors. They have small front gardens. They usually are large enough to have servants' quarters. Um, she leads you through um, a very small porch, um, through a small corridor into a living quarter, off down a door to the right, um, makes another right, walks up a series of stairs, and leads you to a private room on the second floor.
Okay. Do I need to make a mental note of the way we came in?
Not unless you expressly wish to.
I mean, if I need to find my way out of there, probably.
I mean, it's hardly a maze. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay. So is the lady of the house there?
What happens is that the servant knocks on a door, at which point you will hear Katerina's voice, permitting her to enter. The servant just politely asks you to wait for a moment as she wishes to announce your presence.
I'll nod.
She will open the door and close it behind her.
What's in the room and I'm in?
Pardon?
What's in the room I'm in? Is there anything that would pique my interest, like a bookshelf or something like that?
No, you're currently standing outside a corridor.
Oh,
Or inside a corridor, sorry.
boring.
Yeah, you believe the second floor is basically largely just corridors that lead into other rooms. The building appears to be composed of about 3 floors. So you're in the middle floor. But after about a good we'll simply say the Lady Katerina shall see you now.
Thank you. And I will go in the door, I suppose. I assume she's not in the doorway, right?
No. You're able to enter the room. It's a rather humble looking room. Very still of course of noble standing, but a bit more Spartan than it otherwise would be.
Okay.
It's in the room, nicely painted walls, seemingly depicting some sort of floral patterns. There is a small kind of seating area towards the left side of the room that overlooks some picture paintings on the right side. Confronted by a small table. There is a small there's a small what do you say, like share table, like desks, how to say,
Desk?
not desk. Yes, desk side table. With a couple of drawers, which has a potted plant on it, and appears to be fairly well lit. The thing that stands out in the room actually is the flooring. There's several rugs on the floor, and they look quite expensive indeed.
I have no knowledge of such things.
It should also be noted that the sort of sofa, as it were, has silk drapes that can be pulled around it, almost like a curtain,
Mm-hmm.
so you could obfuscate what was going on there.
Okay, weird.
Or simply for the effect of atmosphere. But yes, there is Katerina, who is just simply seated, leg crossed on the sofa. The silken curtains have actually been drawn ever so slightly. There's actually a window directly at the back of the room that gives you quite a nice view. It leads out to a balcony, which again have silken drapes,
Okay.
acting as the doorway.
Well, Brigida will walk towards Katerina and she will announce herself. Good evening, Lady Katerina. I'm here for um, that task you had for me.
Yes, but before we begin, please take a seat with me.
Okay. Um, should I sit on uh, the sofa or never mind? She will sit on the sofa awkwardly.
She appears quite relaxed and casual, and will simply place a hand on your shoulder, um, very casually and softly. She just says, "Please, dear, relax. You are in friendly company. I do
I
not bite that hard."
no offense intended, my lady. This is my normal. I'm quite calm, actually. I am quite dead.
I'm actually gonna have her make an empathy check. Because she wants to know how calm you really are. Well, it's a decent pool for her. And by decent, I mean it's 7 dice, but it's actually quite a lot. Okay, she only gets 2 successes, so how are you feeling generally?
Generally, I am
Yeah.
pretty calm. Like, calm and. Yeah. How much do you get with the two?
Um, Not too much. I think just saying you're calm. Is there any underlying emotion there? Like any
Uh,
ticks?
Perhaps conservative, because I don't really know what to expect here. Well, I'd tell you more, but you only had 2 successes. But yes, it's pretty calm because, emotions are icky.
Hmm. You just came across as slightly nervous, my dear.
Oh, mm, well, yeah, I might appear so. It's just because it's not, I'm out of my element, but that's not really affecting me that much.
If you say so, my dear. I take it your journey here was uneventful.
Well, it was. You mean from. You mean the journey to Odessa or to your house?
To my domain, yes, dear.
No, it was okay. I was only stopped at your door. It was okay.
Given the state of the domain, I have stepped up my domain's defenses and security to ensure that such breaches cannot occur within.
Yes, it's quite understandable given the circumstances, I suppose.
I am glad that you've been able to make your way into the domain without issue. May I ask where you're staying? I hope you found yourself a comfortable haven, or are you still making do with temporary abodes?
I'm okay for the time being, at least. I don't need much. I don't need much. I'm used to a quite humble life.
Ah, I see.
It's bigger than a monastery cell,
Very true.
so I would say that's an upgrade.
I can only assume you surround yourself with the focus of your passion.
Well, not at the moment,
Hmm.
but passion would be quite a strong word. If I may ask, um, I don't know much about the city at the moment. And uh, is there a place of study, like a library that where I would be welcomed, perhaps?
Her arm just subtly uh, slips around your waist, and she just says, "Oh, I could think of several places where you'd be quite welcome. Justinopolis has quite the library, although that place has been rendered somewhat toxic to our kind recently, thanks to the interference of several tactless canines."
Uh, what has happened, if I may ask?
Well, you wouldn't know, you're new to this city, but Abraham's Fountain is renowned for being flooded with faith. Even the ground is soaked in it. It can be quite unnerving to walk upon the grounds, particularly to be near the fountain, which positively radiates danger to our kind. Justinopolis seems to be taking on a similar form,
Mm,
very dangerous for us.
I see. Hmm. Sometimes knowledge is worth the danger.
Oh, in this I very much agree. Unfortunately, there is no university within the city, no centre of learning outside of Justinopolis. Although I am aware of several occult and aristocratic communities which keep personal libraries of their own. And of course, the Judaic and Christian um, denominations host several libraries of their own.
Mm. At the moment, I'm more interested in more occult knowledge. Perhaps a little bit more of theology, maybe, but occult knowledge is my main focus of study. Uh, would I
Oh,
need
that is
significant influence in order to pursue that path?
no offense, my dear, but that is rather predictable.
Well,
But
we make no secret of it.
but theology and occultism go hand in hand. In many ways, they are one and the same.
Well, I
Calling
I
and
agree.
understanding the unnatural. Many secrets that lie within the occult also lie within the theological. After all, occult communities so often find themselves enthralled to one grand spirit or another, or so they believe.
I'm only mostly acquainted with the Christian faiths and traditions. I would be interested in learning more about uh, Judaism.
Well, you have travelled quite a distance to learn about such a thing. Although I am afraid to say you may be out of luck. The Assamites have monopolized the Jewish quarter and the Jewish people, it appears. If you wish to attain access to their knowledge and their people, well, it may require a discussion with one of the representatives of the Assamites of this city.
Well, if I happen to come across one, I will definitely
I
discuss
would,
about it.
I would recommend speaking with Hebony. She is an Assamite neonate and very amenable.
Can you type the name on the side chat?
Mhm. She is a known and well-loved face within this city, in spite of her very young age.
Do you know if I could, where I could uh, find this Ebony?
I may be able to put the two of you in touch,
Hmm.
if of course you perform a task for me.
That's why I'm here, my lady. So, how may I help you?
She smiles. She snaps her fingers. Jasmina! Someone comes hurrying on in, the person you met from earlier. She quickly rushes on in and immediately bows incredibly deeply before Katerina, as if she were royalty, as if she were a queen.
Brigitte does not react.
If you may please fetch the remnants of those two disgusting creatures, I would appreciate it. And Jasmina simply says, "Of course, my lady," and will hurry on out. Katerina simply turns to you. I believe you will have an opportunity to act upon the focus of your passion.
Well, if that is the case, I appreciate your assistance.
Let it be known that I facilitate all passions and points of view. I consider myself quite a open-minded young woman.
That's very respectable.
As you say that, two servant, two servants accompanying Jasmina. Um, um, drop or rather put down two rotting carcasses in front of you.
Okay. Okay, out of character, what would you want me to do with them?
And she's about to explain.
Okay.
Um, she simply makes a dismissive gesture to Jasmina and simply says, "You may go. Return when you are called." And she simply bows, and she remains bowed until she exits the room. For Lady Jasmina is much like yourself, more passionate than she likes to appear.
I see.
I have heard of the Cappadocians' gifts with death. In particular, a certain insight into how one died, when, where, what happened just prior.
Yes. I can do that for you, if you wish.
An advanced and intriguing psychometry that your clan possesses. Normally, I would request this of the Merchant of Bones, but he has departed. Baylor, Baylor and Padre tend to keep to themselves, and I'm not even sure if Baylor possesses the ability in question. He appears to be somewhat over-specialized.
I have yet to meet them, so I cannot say about their abilities. However, I do possess this ability.
I am glad. Upon hearing of your entry into the city, I thought it perhaps would behoove me to show some generosity to the new arrival.
For that, I'm very grateful, my lady.
And you would also be so kind that once you have acquired all the information you positively can from the bodies, and to render them onto dust. We do not wish for any risks to the silence now, particularly in these sensitive times.
There won't be a problem, my lady. I will take care of that as well.
Excellent. I am most grateful for your cooperation. But please, perform your good work I would wish to watch.
That will be okay, I suppose. And Brigida will get up and walk towards the rotting corpses and kneel to the floor. Ah, and we're doing this the hard way.
So you are attempting to trigger final sight.
Yes. So I won't even. Or probably I should do it with a dagger and remove the eyeball with a dagger, because that's how I'm gonna do it. I have to do it this way.
Your pardon?
Well, there are two ways you can do it. You can either drip blood inside the eyeball, the boring way, or you can remove the eyeball and eat it. And that's what I'm going to do.
Let's see. There are two.
Apparently, it's a preference, but since I have the creep show, I think I should do the eyeball.
Absolutely, you do that.
Yes, I'll do that. Let me go back, go to the page though, because I need to remember everything about this ritual. Blah, blah,
I've
blah,
already
blah.
got it up. Basically, roll intelligence plus occult at difficulty 4. Because it's a level 1 ritual.
Okay, intelligence. Intelligence. Am I intelligent? Kinda. 4. You said.
Difficulty 4, yes.
Come on, dice gods. 4 successes. I eat the eyeball.
Okay, over the course of 5 minutes, you also spend a blood point, by the way. So
Yeah,
you're
because
down to
of
5.
course.
Yeah, all blood magic requires a blood point expenditure. It's a hard rule of blood magic.
Do I have to spend 1 per corpse?
Yes.
Fuck. Okay.
And you roll twice because it's
Yeah.
you roll once for each corpse. But you get 5 successes on the first one. It should be noted it's difficult to identify the corpses. They've obviously spent a few days at this point, rotting away.
Mm-hmm.
This one appears to be a fairly well-built male, but it's difficult to tell anything else.
Well, all I need to know is how he died and the circumstances.
Hmm. Um, yeah, you back up all the way half an hour before the subject's death. And you see this man, or rather through their eyes, you see them simply taking a carriage ride home. They are. He is with a. He is riding the carriage with a woman. Youngish, about mid to late 20s. And they're simply making small talk. You learn that the man's name is Nazir, and that the woman's name is Dahlia. They're simply making small talk. Dahlia references Nazir is a father figure. So Nazir is Dahlia's father. And they appear to be having pleasant conversation as they make their way over
Wait.
to.
So Nazir is the father of Dahlia?
Mhm.
Okay. Go ahead.
Dahlia appears to be messing around with a hand mirror and playing with her hair as she talks.
Mm-hmm.
While Nazir is discussing the importance of their meeting. As Nazir looks outside the carriage window, he just kind of turns the curtain ever so slightly. You can see that it's night. It's quite dark outside. They appear to be going through the Nobles' Quarter. And they are stressing the rather he is stressing the importance of this meeting with the Lord and Lady of Vendome.
What?
Vendome. Roll me politics. Roll me intelligence politics to understand what that means.
Fuck. I have nothing in politics, man.
You may not. You have no idea who these what that Vendome is.
Like, uh,
Maybe aliens.
what?
It sounds like some mythological creature as
I
far as
can
you're
only
concerned.
run an intelligence, but that would. I don't see how that would
If
help.
you do not possess a knowledge, you may not make a roll in it.
No. I mean, if it's just politics, then no. I have theology or occult.
That has
Does occult help?
no, not even got a something.
Then no, just type in the name so I can just remember the name.
There you go. And that is the name of the guy. So you got close.
Ah, damn it!
But
Oh no, the guy from Sky was Nazim, not Nazir. Yeah, you're quite right, quite right.
but he's simply discussing the importance of this meeting, but appears to be very optimistic and hopeful, enthusiastic even. The more he talks, the more obvious it becomes that this is some sort of this meeting is to set up. This is to arrange or conclude some sort of betrothal that Dahlia has to one of the sons of House Vendome.
Okay.
In fact, Dahlia even mentions him with a sort of casual air of dismissal, yet also a fair hint of desire. She appears to not necessarily be taking the political consequences of this betrothal as seriously as her father is.
But she wants the guy, though. Is that
Pretty much. She is quite playful about how she approaches the topic. Well, that is until if the carriage is bowled over.
Like
Several cries are heard outside.
so does
You
it
can
like
hear
flip?
the pardon.
Does it flip or something?
It doesn't flip. You're looking at it from the interior because you're seeing this through Nazir's eyes.
Yeah.
You hear the clang. You hear the sort of galloping and clanging of armored horses.
Okay.
And the yelling of about 3 individuals.
Mm-hmm. Do I hear what they say?
It's muffled. You don't hear particularly well. Nazir's hearing isn't great. You think because of his age, he might be a little bit hard of hearing? As the carriage is briefly hurtled to one side, as if it kind of almost as if another carriage had collided with it from the left. Although not literally, it's just an example of like the sort of force it was impacted with. As it goes careening across the road. You hear glass shattering, you hear Nazir panicking, Dahlia screaming. You hear the crunching of bone. You think maybe the man riding the carriage, the man piloting the horses may have gotten crushed underneath the carriage as it careened across the road.
Mm-hmm.
And you just hear the splintering of wood, metal snapping, and Nizira and Dahlia's bodies are kind of colliding with the interior of the carriage as they're again sent careening, or as the carriage is sent careening across the road.
So it's like the like the force of the movement of the carriage is forcing them on the side, like something like that, right?
They're kind of being thrown about the interior of the carriage.
Okay.
Before it slides to a slow grinding halt. At which point you hear the neighing of at least two horses. You can hear them reined in. And you hear about 3 people get off their horses. Which point you you see the door, or rather Nazir sees the busted up door. Now, of course, the door sitting above Nazir as they are sort of, as the carriage has been flipped over 90 degrees.
Is the door opening or broken?
Yeah, you see it. You see it opened. 2 armored men appear to be city watch. And two city watch figures appear to be fairly young men. Begin dragging Nazir and Dahlia out of the carriage. Nazir and Dahlia. Nazir is panicking, asking what the meaning of this is, screaming threats at the two guards, claiming he'll end their lives, have them executed. Dahlia, meanwhile, is screaming for her life.
How about the third person?
You see them dragging them over to a third man, but he is unlike the others. He's not armored, although he is armed. He has a small sheath with a short sword. And he appears quite well dressed indeed. In fact, you'd wager he is an aristocratic figure of some sort. In fact,
Do I
I'll
see
even
him?
see if I can get a picture up for you.
So I see him clear enough that I'd be able to recognize him if I were to see him again.
Yes, one moment. Let me just find you the name. Oh, there you go.
While you're looking, I'm gonna take a pee break.
You scum.
Well, I have a small bladder. What can I say? I'm drinking water. So, BRP.
I've already found a picture.
Ah, damn it! Come on.
No. This is the man you see.
Ooh, howdy. Oops, sorry, wrong character. Meh. He looks like Jesus.
No. He looks at the two. And looks at the two guards and says, in a rather jovial accent, "Ah, yes, these are the two." As Nazir just kind of looks in disbelief, almost like he recognizes this person. As Nazir just goes, "Fucking what? What are you doing? What is the meaning of this?" As the man that you now know is called Firkin simply says, he simply sighs and gives a rather sardonic look towards Nazir. He simply states, "Oh, my dear Nazir, if you can't figure that out, then, well, I can only call this entire situation inevitable." Simply nods again, kind of makes a sound towards the two guards and says, "Do as you will, toss them in the lake." As as Dahlia screams and Nazir just lets out a cry as he just goes, "Fucking no!" And he's just cut off at sea. He is just completely decapitated by these two men.
Okay, I missed something. Like, he ordered them to throw them in a lake? What was that?
Oh yeah, not in the lake, in the river, sorry.
Okay.
He's not decapitated, by the way, they just slit their throats. You would have noted if there was a decapitation on the bodies.
Yes. There wouldn't be eyeballs. Was the man's name mentioned in this encounter, or I don't know?
Yes, this man was mentioned as being called Firkin.
Firkin? Type it. Damn it.
Uncultured swine. There
Look,
you go.
that's my word, okay? I've used that insult.
And obviously, as Nazir dies, you do see a brief few moments as the life leaves Nazir. As Firkin just says, "I trust the captain will not be hearing of this, and that your cohorts will clean up this mess. Waste no time." As Nazir finally dies and the vision ends.
Okay, so I snap out of the vision. Uh, do I tell her about it now or after I'm done with the second corpse? Whom I assume will be the daughter.
Make me, if you want to identify the body, make me a perception medicine roll, difficulty 8, because the body has decayed significantly.
Perception and what?
Medicine.
Okay. I guess better than nothing.
If you don't have good medicine as a Cappadocian necromancer, I'm going to be fucking. Oh my god, you are terrible.
Not yet. Well, I was about to build it, but I had to spend points for the cult.
Boom.
Uh,
Okay,
okay.
one success. Because you do have a reference of your vision, yes. You do vaguely recognize this as maybe Dahlia, Nazir's daughter.
Okay. Well, before I roll to eat her eyeball, I'm gonna go pee. I'll be fast. Okay.
God damn it.
Come on, man. If I was a guy, I would have a bottle.
You back?
Okay, here I am.
Alright.
Okay, what do I roll again? Fuck. Where is it? Nyeh.
Intelligence cult difficulty 4. What's this? Actually, I'm going to check personally what those stats are you have, because okay, do you have self-control 4?
3 success.
Okay, so the vision is less clear this time. So you only see the last few minutes. So you only you basically see what you did before, but from Dahlia's perspective. But the crash happens a lot quicker. Because it's taking place only about a couple minutes before the crash.
Okay.
So how is she feeling?
Um, you just see what Nazir saw, but from Dahlia's perspective. You don't necessarily get her emotional state. She appears to have the same sort of emotional bearing you saw when Nazir saw her. She does. She doesn't really seem to have much more additional information to share with you. The vision is largely the same, just from a different perspective.
Mm. Does she know the guy?
No, she was begging for her life.
Okay. So I don't get any more info from her, do I?
No, although she is, you do at one point. She's sort of murmuring to herself that she's being dragged out. Where are the guards? Where are the guards? Where are the guards? Um, Referencing either the lack of city watch patrols within the nobles' quarter, which definitely stands out to you, or the fact that this carriage is lacking an escort it was meant to have, but it's not immediately clear. That's the only real additional piece of information you get. Because the curtains were largely closed in the carriage, she doesn't really see much more than Nazir would have saw,
Mm-hmm.
or would have seen.
All right. Okay.
And we'll return to Katerina. Although you will say this, Brigitte, you're not hungry, but you are. You're not hungry to the point where your beast is kind of gnawing at
I'm
your chest, but
bad. I'm at 4.
you are, yeah, you are feeling hungry.
And do I also need to spend blood to ash them?
If you wish to ash them, yes, you will.
Oh fuck.
Well, let me double check, but I believe you do. Yes, you do.
Mm. So if I want to do that, I'll go down to 2. God damn it. 2 is dangerous.
Hmm. Katerina looks at you. She's been looking, because obviously you've had this vision, you haven't really been very aware of your surroundings. But she hasn't moved from her spot. She just has a leg crossed, has cover, her hands clasped, and has really just been looking at you very intently throughout the entirety of your vision, it seems. She seems very intrigued by your morbid practices. Such such exotic retail on display here. Quite fascinating to her. Something she finds mildly curious.
Brigitte will get up and we'll go back towards Lady Katarina. Um, I do know, she will say, I do know who these two are, their first names. I know where they were going. I know how they perished. And she will give a very, very detailed account of her visions. I'm not gonna repeat everything you say, obviously, but it's going to be very, very detailed. And she will describe the man who had them very, very in a very detailed fashion. Like she will describe like the blue eyes, like the thin eyebrows, the nose, how his face was, the beard, and everything like that. And the name, of course, Firkin.
Okay. She's going to make a manipulation subterfuge check because that she recognizes that name and she doesn't want to let you know that. Because Canaanites being shady. This is
Uh,
actually her specialty.
I need perception, empathy to see that.
Yes. She gets 9 successes. Do you have 10 dice?
I'm not even gonna try. Not even. Nah, not gonna happen.
As it so happens, Lady Catherine is extremely good at keeping a secret. It's almost as if it's like kind of half her job.
Yeah.
She simply smiles and gives you a sort of soft clap. Well done, Brigitte. Well done.
As for the other matter, if I don't believe I have enough vitae in me to perform the other task.
Oh, that is no problem. She'll simply snap her fingers again. Jasmina, fetch some of the fresh vessels, if you would. Thank you. Jasmina simply responds in the same fashion as she does before. Of course, my lady. And hurries on off. Within but, well, there's actually a brief waiting period. I prefer to keep my supply fresh and available.
Yes, I find this quite envious.
Well, it took no small amount of effort, but I'm sure given a few months, years, maybe even decades, you will have a little slice of Odessa for your own.
As I said, I don't require much.
But we all require blood.
Yes.
The great equalizer, some of the more rash among the neonates call it.
Well, it's a necessity to continue doing our work.
It is. I can see why many place value upon it as a commodity. I can't say I do not. And as she says that, Jasmina and about three servants will walk in. 2 maids, 1 manservant. They both look quite healthy. And they simply kneel before you and Katerina and offer themselves to you, seemingly completely willingly.
Okay. How much blood is there in one of them that I can safely get?
A human has 10 blood points you can safely take to.
Okay, so I don't want to be greedy, so I'll take 2 from one and 2 from the other, and I'll leave the third out because I don't want to be greedy. So I'll be back pretty much to where I was.
So you'll take 2 from one.
And 2 from the second one.
Okay.
And
There are
then,
4 people. There's 2 maids, a manservant, and Jasmina.
well, I wouldn't touch the main servant because, come on. uh, I, yeah, I don't want to be greedy because it's like, come on, she's a fucking monk. She'll take enough. So now I'm at 4. That would put me at, yeah. I'll take 2 and 2, and that's that. Question out of character: if on the ashes roll, I I can spend willpower on that, right?
To reduce someone to ash?
Well, it requires a roll.
Let me double check my rules. I'm not sure if I allow people spending willpower on discipline rolls. Let me double check. I may have started allowing it. No, people can spend willpower on discipline rolls now. So you can spend willpower on the 2 checks required to ash the bodies.
Okay. Then let's hope I don't botch them. Because my pool is pretty low at the moment. Yeah. So then Brigida will just go back to the corpses and hope for the best. I assume that's standard. Yeah, it's standard. Yeah, it says in the thing. Fuck. Okay, 3 successes. Let's do the second one. Two successes. Okay, okay, okay. It will take a little time. Uh,
Okay, so which ones do you spend willpower for?
I didn't. Oh, I thought you said I couldn't. I
Yeah, I
could.
said you could, yeah.
Well, I didn't. Doesn't matter.
Alright.
At least I didn't botch. It's corpse disintegrates in a number of turns equal to 5 minus the number of successes rolled.
So the bodies within 10 seconds have all but decomposed. They are but dust on the floor. As you do so, Katerina seemingly takes it as a bit of theatre and feeds off of Jasmina, who has offered her wrists to the lady Katerina. Katerina, you can see, kind of observes this take place as she feeds off of Jasmina, and Jasmina obviously succumbs to the kiss. And then once the body's ash, Katerina releases her fangs from Jasmina.
Tells her to grab a broom.
Katerina simply makes a gesture towards the other servants. She sends the 2 you fed off of away to rest. The ones who are not, the one who is not fed off of, is gestured towards the ash, and they begin to they quickly gather a broom to sweep it away and clean it up.
Brigitte will walk back towards Lady Katerina. Proclaim, I suppose.
Room smells a lot better now that the corpses are gone. You only really started noticing this now, perhaps because you're just so used to, well, the putrid smell.
Yeah. I hope that my services have satisfied you, my lady. That sounds so much dirtier in my brain.
Out of the gutter, please. You're not a bone gnawer.
Yeah.
Katerina simply says, "Oh, they very much have. And I'm sure I will have many more services for you to perform for me in the future. But you have upheld your end of our exchange, and now it is time for me to uphold mine. I will put you in contact with Hebony, as you so wish. And I will even put in a good word for you, to perhaps assist in tiding the Assamites over."
I'm very grateful for your assistance, my lady.
Of course, I'm sure the Assamites will request some transaction of their own, but outside of recording it, it is not my business, I'm afraid.
Yes, it is expected.
I'm sure if you are as useful to them as you have been to me, you'll have access to their repositories in no time at all.
I hope I can be of use wherever I can. Would you need anything else of me, my lady?
You have given me much to consider, Brigitte. There may be a time when I call upon you again, but for the moment, you have done much to sate my thirst.
It's good to be of service. If you don't mind, I will see myself back to my haven.
Of course. And if I may, if you ever find yourself without the means to satiate yourself as readily as others among us would, always feel welcome to pay me a visit.
I thank you for your hospitality. I wish you a nice evening.
Good evening, Brigitte.
And Brigida will sashay out of there. More like, walk.
And yeah, you leave the area, leaving the scene.
Yes.
Thank you, player, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. We'll see you all next time as the plot thickens for both Katerina and Brigitte. See you next time.